Gaming Geek here with a head-to-head comparison between Games Workshop Kill Team and Mantic's Deadzone. Both of these are skirmishes with small teams on a battlefield, and I wanted to compare the two and see which one played better, which one had better miniatures, and overall which is the better experience. And so let's go ahead and dive in. I'm not going to go through the various rules for each game. I did do a video on how to play Kill Team and also a follow-up video of how not to play Kill Team. And you can click here if you want to check those out. There is a really good video that someone else did for how to play Deadzone, and I would suggest you take a look at that if you're really interested in finding out the rules. But I'll do a quick sort of overview of some of the similarities and differences between the two games. You'll notice right away that Deadzone is a simpler and more streamlined game than Kill Team is. So for example, both games have a mechanic where you can use skill points in order to do special actions. And so with Deadzone, you're rolling these dice at the beginning of each round, and these enable you to do special actions or additional actions. So for example, this gives one of your models an extra fight attack, a melee attack. This one gives a special, an additional shoot, because normally you're only limited to one shot per figure. This one enables you to activate another character before passing it off to the other player, and then these are specials. And so there's really only 6 options that are available to both players for special actions each round. So that simplifies it a lot. Now, Kill Team does have a similar mechanic where you're using command points in order to do special or extra movements or attacks. The difference is that you're accumulating command points, usually 2 per round, that you can spend unless your leader is shaken or taken out of action. Then you only receive 1. And you have a lot more options. Ones that are available to everybody, and I printed them out here. And then for each faction, you have faction-specific commands. And if you buy the box set, you'll get additional commands that aren't in the original rule book. Not only that, but each one of your specialists also has their own commands. So for example, your combat specialist starts off not only with this first level 1, but you have level 2 and level 3 as they progress in their abilities. And then scenarios are also providing their own commands that are available to the players as well. So there's a lot more complexity, and with more complexity with Kill Team, and this is in general true, you just have a lot more tactical decisions and choices to make. And so for some people, that's going to be a bonus, that there's more in-depth play, that there's more decisions that you can make, more variability. But if you're looking for a simple and streamlined game, you're going to find that more in Deadzone overall. One of the big differences between these two games is how the models activate, where in Deadzone you have the more traditional I go, you go turn sequence. So for example, I can take my Stage 2 leaper, let's say I use a run movement or sprint movement to get up here. As soon as I enter, I get a free fight action, and so I'm going to roll my 3 attack dice. I get some bonuses because he's larger, and then also he was the one who moved in to attack, and so I'm rolling my dice. He hits on a 4+, and then the defender, who's a regular enforcer, will be saving on a 4+, so he rolls and basically gets 2. So it's 2 as opposed to 4 successes. So 2 wounds are going to go to him, which basically eliminates him. And then the enforcer side will go. So it's going back and forth. So you're resolving each unit's actions all at once. And that's more of a traditional game sequence. Here for Kill Team, you have a battle round where all of your models are going through these various 6 phases. And so instead of one guy moving and then shooting and attacking, one whole side moves, and whoever has the initiative will choose to move all of their models, and you have different options. Instead of moving, they can choose to aim, and instead of the aim giving them a bonus to hit or damage, it actually enables them during the shoot phase to shoot first. And so the whole squad is doing one action together at a time. And so the Gene Stealers will move all of their figures, and then the Space Marines will do the same before they actually go to the psychic phase and then the shooting phase. And then during the shooting phase, you'll take turns. It isn't like one side will all shoot at once before the other side goes. At this point, you do alternate, but everyone is shooting. Anyone who can shoot will shoot, and then you move on to the fight phase, which is anyone who's in melee or who has charged during the movement phase, they can at that point fight. So it's a very interesting mechanic where instead of each individual model resolving its action completely, the whole squad has to resolve their movement first, and then they're shooting, and then they're fighting. Which one of these two is better? I don't know if I can say one is better over the other. The interesting dynamic with Kill Team is that it does pose a different set of strategy, and how you go about doing things is going to be different than if you were resolving things individually. And so because you're moving all of your figures, you don't know who is going to be successful at hitting and taking out one of the enemies, whereas when you're doing I go, you go, you can move one model, and if it takes out an enemy, or if it doesn't, then you can move a second model in to try to finish it off. Here, you sort of have to plan and strategize. Well, if this model doesn't take out the enemy, do I want to bring up another model to try to take it out? And so you need to think more in advance and more strategically, a little bit more like chess, where you have to think a couple of moves in anticipation because you're not quite sure how things are going to resolve. And so I think strategically it does require a little bit more to use the method with Kill Team than it does with Deadzone. I do like that aspect. I do think it's a unique aspect of Kill Team. Definitely, in some ways, I do think, again, Deadzone is a little bit simpler because of the I go, you go mechanic. Another difference that you're going to notice right away is measurement and movement. Right away, you'll notice that Deadzone has these 3-inch squares, not only two-dimensionally as you're moving this direction, but also you're moving up, and all of the buildings and sections are exactly 3x3s. What that has done is simplified movement to where you do not need to use a ruler like you do with Kill Team. All of the movements in Kill Team is made with a ruler with inches, both vertical and horizontal movement. Deadzone, you do not need a ruler because all of the movement is determined by this stat here, where you'll notice that most figures is one movement, one square, or you can move two if you use a long action in order to basically run. This guy can move two if he runs, or he can go up. So, for example, this is actually just one point of movement to go up and into this square. So movement is a lot more simplified here because you're on a grid-based system. It does matter where you place your figure within each of the squares because this system uses true line of sight. And so if this guy up here is shooting down here, you'll just get behind the figure and see, or use a laser pointer and see if any part of this model is obstructed. And again, with Deadzone, it is any part, including the base. If you can see it, you can shoot at it. If a part of it is obstructed, it's obstructed. Kill Team, again, is more complex. And this is sort of a stupid rule. I'm not sure why they decided this, but if you can see any part of the model that's visible from any point on your model, you do have line of sight. So, for example, if only this Marine's gun is sticking out and I can see it, I can actually shoot at that figure. You only use the body, though, in order to determine whether or not the figure is obstructed. And the base doesn't count for any line of sight issues here. Again, for me, I'm like, why that difference? Why not just make it simple? and make it a rule of both line of sight and obstruction being the same thing in the way that Mantic does it. But again, you're going to have greater complexity with Kill Team. I think one of the biggest differences between the two systems is combat resolution. And this is where you're going to see a huge difference between the two games. In Kill Team, you need to roll 4 times before you can take potentially one of the enemies out of action. And so what you're doing is you're rolling a 2-hit roll. So let's say I roll 3 dice trying to hit because I have 3 attacks, and I have a 4+ to hit. So here I have 2 hits. I've successfully hit twice with one of my Gene Stealers, let's say. And then after I hit, I have to see if I wound. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the strength statistic of the attacker versus the toughness. If they are even, I need 4 pluses, and then there's modifiers if the strength is bigger or lower than the toughness of the target. And so let's say they're even, and so I would need a 4+ to hit. And here I would hit both of them, or successfully wound after hitting. After that, the unit that's being attacked gets a save throw, and the Marines have a save throw of 3+. And so if they roll 3, in this case, he saves against one of them. So right now, only one of the wounds is going through. And then finally, let's say that the Space Marine only had one more wound left. Once the target is knocked down to 0, I do an injury roll to see whether or not they receive a flesh wound or whether or not they're taken out completely. And so it would be taken out completely because 4, 5, and 6s means that it's dead, and then 1 to 3 means it just takes a flesh wound, which makes it harder for them. It gives them penalties to hit. The combat resolution is much, much more complicated with Kill Team. And I wonder about this because I felt like Kill Team needs one less set of rolls because it just feels very hard to kill anything. If you think about it this way, if I have a 1-attack weapon, let's say a pistol weapon that only rolls 1 dice, and let's say I succeed, I have a ballistic skill of 4+, which is a 50-50 chance. That isn't bad. 50% of the time I'm going to hit. But on top of that, next I will need, let's say the toughness, the strength and the toughness is even, and so I would need a 4+ for that, which is another 50-50. And then let's say the save throw is also 4+, that's 50-50. And then the injury roll without modifiers is also a 4, 5, or 6, which is 50-50. So think about it this way. With a 1-die attack weapon, in order to potentially kill a 1-hit point enemy, I would need to flip a coin heads 4 times in a row. So think about that statistically, right? How often are you able to roll a heads 4 times in a row? Now, obviously those chances and odds are mitigated when you're rolling more dice. So when you start off with 3 dice, 3 attack dice, then you're mitigating some of that. But it still feels like in Kill Team that it's very difficult to wipe out enemies off of the board, and that makes the game last longer. Not only on top of that, there's a morale system where you have to check for morale, and that can become complicated as well. In contrast with Deadzone, it is opposed dice. When you look over here, you see that this Peacekeeper Captain needs to roll 4 pluses, and every figure starts out with a base 3 sets of dice, both for defense and for attack. And so he would roll, and here you see that he would have 3 successes. And then the defender would also roll, and they have a save. They had a save more of 4 pluses, so they got hit. They would roll 3 dice as well, and this is without modifiers. And with a 4+, they only save twice. The thing that I also like about Deadzone is that they have exploding dice, and so when you roll an 8, you get to roll another dice. And so that's what exploding dice is, to see whether or not you get a success. These stats never get modified, whereas in Kill Team, there's a lot of things like obstruction that will give you a negative to hit. Here, the way that modifiers work is you start out with your base 3, and then let's say that they are unobstructed, and you have a clear shot at the figure, you actually add 2 more dice to roll. Your 2-hit never changes, but you're adding more and more dice that increases your chances of wounding the figure. So the combat resolution is a lot quicker, a lot cleaner, because it's just one roll, and it's an opposed roll. If I have 3 successes and the target has 2 successes, then only 1 point of damage goes through. And so that makes combat resolution a lot more quick and a lot easier, I think, in Deadzone than it does for Kill Team. So let's go ahead and talk about the dice in both systems. So Kill Team uses D6s, and I think it's because they're tied to the 40K rule set, which uses D6s, versus the D8s that Deadzone uses. I'm a fan of going away from D6s and using either D8s or D10s. And the reason is because you have a smaller percentage difference between one result and another. What do I mean by that? The Space Marines have a 3+ to hit with both melee and shooting, and their saving throw is 3+. Whereas the Tyranids, their shooting skill, ballistic skill, is a 4+. 1 point doesn't seem like it's that big of a difference, but in the game it actually is a huge difference, because they have a 2 in 3 chance if they're hitting on a 3, 4, 5, or 6, versus my Tyranids, 1 in 2 chance to hit. Because they're hitting on 4, 5, or 6. And so that is a really big difference. And in some ways, I think that the Marines are a little bit overpowered because their save is 3+ as well. Whereas when you have a D8, the difference between a 5 and a 6, or 1 point of difference, is only a 12% difference in chance, either greater or lower. Whereas with the D6, 1 point of difference is a 17% chance. Again, that doesn't seem or sound very significant, but in actual gameplay, that is actually a really, really big difference. So I really like the higher dice, either a D8 or D10 systems, better than the D6. All right, next, so let's go ahead and compare the costs between the two games. And this is no contest. As everyone knows, Games Workshop is known for their high prices. The thing I'm thankful for with Kill Team is that you don't have to buy a $300 army just to get started in the game. So I'm thankful that in the skirmish set, you can get away with just buying a pack of 5 Marines that comes in the starter pack, and you can have a Kill Team that way. One of the first differences is you cannot buy the starter set for Kill Team anymore, which is a little bit ridiculous because the game came out last summer, and in less than a year later, you can't even buy the core set, and they're not planning on reprinting it. But that core set was an awesome deal at $110. You got 2 factions, you got awesome terrain, you had everything that you needed. Now you have to buy everything separately. And so let me give you a breakdown of how much my Tyranids cost me for me to build that army. I did buy the box set, which gave me 8 Gene Stealers, but I also added in these Tyranid Warriors. I got a box set of 3 of them, and they're expensive because it cost me $43 at discount. That's a discounted price just to buy 3 models. And then I bought a box of Termagants, which are these guys. And you do get a lot of these. I think these are a better deal, but again, that still cost me $25. On the other hand, for Deadzone, you can buy the starter set. This is version 2, but you can buy this, a beginner set, for about $70. And that'll give you 2 factions. You don't get the Plague, but you get the squat Space Dwarves along with the Enforcers. And as well, if you want an army, you can buy an army on Amazon for about $35, which is way cheaper than you can get for Games Workshop. Here, I think they're okay models, right? They look okay, but I've always felt like Mantic miniatures were sort of so-so. Let's look at this Enforcer Captain. And so they definitely have enough detail where you can paint them up pretty well. But let's be honest, the Games Workshop models are the standard. They create the standard for quality of miniatures. And so when you stick these side by side, you can really tell the difference. Now, The scale is going to be off because the Primaris Marines are huge. Even compared to the Terminators, Marines and Terminator armor, the Primaris are actually bigger and taller than the Terminators are. And so the scale is a little bit wonky with the Primaris Marines, and I've heard rumors that they're getting rid of the regular Space Marines and replacing them all with Primaris. If you just want to compare between Games Workshop models, it's just sort of no contest. Games Workshop is just going to have way better details and cooler looking models and variety than Mantic is going to have. The final category in comparison between these two games actually has to do with support. So player support, support of the game by the publishers. The thing that I really like about Mantic and Deadzone is that they encourage fan-based material, and so here we see a universal head, a quick reference rule guide, which I really appreciate a lot. It has all of the abilities here that I can reference, and so I love the fact that Mantic are not licensed Nazis and basically allow things for that to happen. And so a lot of player aids and support coming your way. And they did come out with a new book called Outbreak, which basically updated all of the army lists and evened them out a little bit more. So I really like that about Mantic. It's very approachable. Having said that though, Games Workshop Kill Team is not going to go away anytime soon. It's super popular. And so, and obviously the lore behind the Games Workshop universe is amazing. You know, I've read a couple of the books from Black Library, and so it's easier to get immersed into the storyline of the grimdark future. And at any given moment, I can go to my hobby store and pick up a game of Kill Team because a lot of people are playing it. And it is really, really popular. On the other hand, I don't know anyone who plays Deadzone. If I want to play Deadzone, I have to basically teach my friends and we have to play amongst ourselves because there's no organized play that I know of or tournaments that I've seen. So having considered all of those things, what is the conclusion about which is the better game? I will have to say that Deadzone is the better game. It's the game that I prefer. It is much more streamlined than Kill Team, and because of that, if I had a choice between these two games, I would choose to play Deadzone. I think the rule set is much tighter. I appreciate how the rules are laid out, that it's much clearer. I think some of the writing in the rulebook for Kill Team is a little bit lazy, and it takes a lot of time trying to track down exactly what the rules are, and so I think I like the system that is set up for Deadzone. Now, some of you do want a crunchier game. You do want something that's more complex, more complicated, where you do have more in-depth tactics, although I do think that Deadzone does have deep tactical gameplay. And so for some of you, you won't mind the 4 different role tests that you have to make in order to resolve combat. I feel like that's clunky to me, and I would much rather have a fast-playing game, and a lot of models are being taken off the board. They do play and feel differently, and many of you just personally will prefer Kill Team over Deadzone. But for me, I find the simplicity, the game flow, that you can get a game done in about 45 minutes. With Deadzone, I find that actually a lot more appealing. Now, having said that, one of the things I actually do wish that I could do with Deadzone is to play with all of my new terrain that I bought. And if you haven't seen that video, go ahead and click here and you can see my review of all the terrain that I purchased. I do like the movement system here, and it does simplify things, and so again, my preference would be for Deadzone. Honestly though, having said that, I do think I will actually end up playing more of Kill Team, only because there are so many people that are playing it. And so I'm able to go to my hobby store and pretty much pick up a game of Kill Team with another person, knowing that someone will be there who will want to play. Whereas with Deadzone, like I mentioned before, I don't know anyone who's playing. I am curious to talk with Mantic representatives when I go to Adepticon this year at the end of March, which is next month. I do want to ask them about support and future plans for Deadzone, because I do think it's an excellent game. And when I do play Deadzone with my friends, I will proxy in the Games Workshop miniatures, and so it's pretty easy for me to be able to swap out those minis. I think my Tyranids would be perfect for the nameless ones as a faction, and it would be fairly easy for me to actually take pictures of each one of my models and stick it in and create one of the character cards. It's not hard to do at all. So that mitigates a little bit the whole miniatures quality thing about Deadzone and Mantic. And I also have intention of fielding a orc army, since in Deadzone there is an orc faction, and so I'm specifically collecting Games Workshop orcs models in order to be able to play with Deadzone and not necessarily with Kill Team, because I think the orcs in the Kill Team are a little underpowered because their stats are pretty horrible. So that is pretty much what my conclusion is. What are your conclusions? And I would especially be curious to hear from those of you who have played both games about what your thoughts are. Do you come to the same conclusion that I do, or do you actually prefer to play Kill Team over Deadzone? And so please comment below. Appreciate that. And as always, subscribe and like.